In this week's episode of our photography review show, we're gonna review over 49 photos from 18 photographers. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of our photography review show. Now I hope you had a great week and I hope you're ready for another portion of photography reviews. Now if you've never been here with us before, for those who don't know me, my name is Jakub and I'm a professional photographer based in West Sussex, England. Now for the past 6 or 7 months, I've been reviewing photos here at the photography community and it's been very popular. We reviewed thousands of images from hundreds of photographers and this is the reason why we had to limit the entries to 1 or 2 photos per week per photographer. And also for the same reason, we had to take the show and divide it between 2 or 3 different parts. Usually we look at the landscape photographers in the first part, and then in the rest of the parts we look at the rest of the photography styles. Now before we're gonna jump into the reviewing, I wanted to remind you about our Facebook photography group. It's called Clever Photographer Academy and it's all about photography. So all you need to do is to head to Facebook and search for Clever Photographer Academy and join us today. We do regular photography competitions there, we review your photos, we answer your photography questions, and we have lots of fun. So if you haven't joined us yet, make sure you do that today. And now, without any further ado, let's jump into the reviewing. And here we are with the first part of the show, where we're gonna be looking at landscape photography. Now we have 8 photographers to look at, so let's jump straight into it. But before we're gonna do that, I wanted to quickly remind you about making sure that you like this video, that you comment below, and also follow our channel so we can keep creating and producing content like this. But now, let's do it. So starting with Bill right here, we have 2 images from him. So let's have a look at it. Let's go into the details and see if we have camera details, and we do. So this was shot with Nikon D7200, and starting with this one right here, the setting on the camera, ISO 100, 18mm f14, 1/80th of a second. So first, ISO 100 is spot on. That's exactly what we're looking for. Ideal value to make sure that we don't introduce any color or digital noise to the image, so that's great. F14, I wonder why the F14, what was the thought behind? Obviously when it comes to sharpness, because the item is or element is so close to you, I think F11 would have been more than enough. However, nothing really wrong with F14. It's really once you get to F16 or more like F20 when you start to reintroduce a noise and softness back to the image. So F14 is good. I'm just trying to figure out what was the idea, but maybe also underexposed to create this silhouette effect. That could be also another reason. And with 1/80th of a second, usually it's up to about 1/40th, 1/50th of the second when we we can handheld the camera. We don't need a tripod for that. So you perfectly fine there. Now looking at the image from this point of view, I like the details in the sky. That looks quite cool. Some nice texture, lovely. The silhouette effect created very nicely done as well, with lots of details and sharpness. The light is quite pleasing with the warmth coming from the bottom. So in overall, I think as technical details and technical skills goes, this is quite well captured. Which brings us to the next image, which is very similar in style. And also similar to setting, this time ISO 100, f14 and 1/50th of a second. So ISO 100 again, f14 is perfectly fine, and 1/50th of a second. So pretty much the same values and same result. Again, nice details in the sky with a nice warmth to it, and again lovely silhouette effect right here. Now, it's really when we go to the composition where maybe things just go differently, and I think there is a big difference between the two of them. And the first thing is the actual balance of the composition. It's when you look at this, there's the main tree and then very similar the foliage on each one of them, creating very nice and very pleasing view with very balanced edges, and making it a very nice and sorted composition. So I think looking like this from this point of view, knowing that it's very busy, there's lots of details, lots of texture happening there because of the main tree being surrounded by very balanced surroundings, I think that works very well. But when we look at this one, that's not the case. Although you have this main tree, which is quite cool, there's just lots happening. It's very unbalanced. You have this empty space here, and then you have this tree here. Also, it looks a little bit like it's tilting compared to here where the horizon or the dark part really look very kind of set. In this case, it's kind of little going to even littlest. So as a composition go, I think this one was much more powerful, and I think it would be probably even nicer being printed on a canvas or something like this. Nothing broke about this one either. I just think between the two, more if you would have presented it to people, more people would have come to this. Simply, many of them without even being able to tell you why. And the reason would be, first of all, this really nicely balanced composition. Now, I think when it comes to these silhouettes effects, I think they can be really, really powerful, but you really need to be able to handle the busyness of it. Obviously, lots of branches, lots happening there. So sometimes it's easier to just pick one tree if you can, like an isolated tree, and really bring it out, because it creates a more powerful more powerful view and more powerful composition rather than involving lots of stuff. If you involve lots of stuff in it, then you're looking for something like this where it just has certain order. Even these little spaces here, as there is one on each side, it kind of just makes it a little bit more pleasing. So that's us with the composition. And then the post-processing, to be honest, I don't have much to add to it, Bill. I think it's very nicely done. It's very pleasing, very warm, very smooth. I think it's just nicely done. I'm sorry I can't give you more tips on this one here because it's just nicely done. Obviously, the sky is nicely popped out. The colors are very natural. I think the silhouette is very nicely edited. And all in all together, they are lovely two pictures. I prefer this one, but it could be also just a personal choice. Still, a great job. Well done. Thank you for sharing the pictures with us. And if you have more, as always, make sure you share them with us soon. So let's move to another photographer. This time we're going to look at Jack. Jack was our photographer of the week back in 2021. And here we have another of his capture. This very, very interesting black and white photo with lovely details. Very kind of minimal white edit with lots of contrast. Just very, very nicely done, Jack. So let's have a look at it. First of all, no camera details, which is a little bit of a shame, but we can definitely kind of zoom in. Let's see. There's lots of details, lots of sharpness. There is obviously the kind of overexposed sky, which I think works really well in a contrast with the tree. So that's also very, very nicely done. The reflection is great as well. Loving that all the way with the tree as well as the house, creating very, very nice, almost ethereal view and result. Now, technically, I think that's about it. The light is very nice and diffuse, which kind of works with this kind of sky, creating very nice balanced scene. Now, when it comes to composition, I'm sure you know, but obviously my idea would be to have the tree there all of it. I know it's not always possible, so I'm not saying that it's wrong. However, if you would really want to push the image, that's what you would be kind of shooting for. So I wonder if maybe the water didn't go far enough, or if there's something happened on the top. There will be definitely some kind of reason, but I'm sure, as you know yourself, if the tree would be there in the full view, I think it would be even a little nicer. Still, it's very, very cool as again, and as a composition goes. I love when the reflection is placed in the middle. I think it creates really nice balance to the scene. This really nice contrast created by this kind of bright sky with the dark texture in front of it creates something very, very nice. The center of the tree, I think, works very well here. The building as well at the back, just adding a little bit of a sense of a scale, helping us to know how big the tree was and really just pushing the dominance of the object up, and I think it works very well here. Now, when it comes to post-processing, really not much I would do here. There's just some 3 dots here, but they were probably inside of the water. I think the reflection is well edited. I like the darkness. I really like what you've done with the shadows and highlights, that you didn't go just for the simple silhouette, but left some texture and some highlights and shadows viewable, so it's even more nicer. I really like the texture, add more I think reality to it, and it just creates a very, very nice result. So when I look at it like this, since I haven't seen the camera settings really, looking at it from this point of view, it's a beautiful image, definitely one for a print. However, if I would want to be really picky, I would have wished the entire tree was there. Of course, then further you go, the building is getting smaller and so on. But that would be just the one thing. The rest, I think, is brilliant. So, Jack, thank you so much for sharing your image. It's been a while, and it's always great to see your pictures. Lots of motivation here, and this one is brilliant. So, thank you. And it's time to move to another photographer. This time, we're looking at James Fitzgerald photos. And James, we do 1 or 2 pictures per week, so we will have to pick some. So, wondering about which one should we pick up. Definitely this one. And maybe this or this or this. This one and that one, because I think that would be nice to compare. So let's keep those for next time. If you want us to remove them, just make sure you send them for the next show. But in the meantime, let's have a look at these two. So sadly, there is no camera details on it, but that's fine. Let's just look at it from what we can see. So first of all, let's look at the sharpness, which seems to be quite fine. Looking at the size of the image, obviously there is a little bit of pixelation from the JPEG. However, still nicely done. Even the man moving, quite cool. Obviously, the water and boats being on, there is always a little bit of worry that there will be a little bit of shake. There is maybe a little bit here, but nothing major. And when you kind of zoom out, it all looks quite crisp. Now, of course, the sky is absolutely incredible with lots of nice blue and warmth. My favorite. I think that is definitely something what pushed the image another few levels up. The combination of the water, the combination of the reflection, the combination of the warm colors and the pleasant light just works very, very well, and it's super well done. Looking at it like this, I don't see any noise, so the ISO was nice and done, and that's about it. So very good. Now, in that combination, when we bring it here to this image, which is similar to this, I mean, when it comes to the environment, we again in the marina. Starting first of all, lots of noise. You kind of zoom in, even though it's pretty much similar size of the image as the previous one. This one, the ISO was probably much higher. This is the kind of noise when you look closer, you even start to lose the detail and texture. Like on these, you could never really save those. And just like with all the cameras, when you really push the ISO, there is a certain threshold until when you can save it. And then from that point on, there is nothing you can do about it. And that really differentiates on camera, on your gear, on the lens, and it just really depends on how much you can push it. And every camera has a difference. So for example, with my Sony a7R7 IV, I'm usually good until about 2000 ISO, depend on the light, but that's about as far as I can go without really just kind of destroying the image. When I go over that, I know that anything I'm gonna do after will just not look good. So that's just for the future. Also looking at it from here, you can see here, lots of sensor dust, which is quite visible. So again, something to kind of work with for the future and making sure that you remove it. If you need to see how to do that, there is a video in the description on removing the sensor dust. However, there is like this healing brush. You can click on visualize spots, and sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. In this case, they don't as much because there is the lots of noise. So when we switch it off, we can simply just go and pick one, for example, here. Just for example, you just click here and it kind of removes itself. It takes a little bit of time, but it's definitely something worth to do because there's nothing worse than when you print the image or show it to somebody that has these spots. So just something for the future. So technically, as I say, so lots of noise, sensor dust, and because of the noise, some of the sharpness is gone. Still quite nice light, but obviously when you compare the two images next to each other with this beautiful sky or just a blue gradient, that one would have win. Which brings us nicely here to the composition. Now, from looking at it like this, it seems that maybe it's tilting a little bit, but maybe that's just me. Let's just see, just something like this, just to be sure. What I would do in this case, because there is lots of this blue gradient and following the kind of idea that whatever doesn't need to be in the image, if it doesn't add anything to the storytelling or the overall message, just remove it. So in this case, because there's lots of this blue, I would just go for something like 16:9, which is nice panoramic crop. I would center the boat in the center and just maybe push it something this. So I'll be punching more to the boats, focusing on them, and not really worrying too much about the sky. Now there would have to be a little bit more work done with the sensor dust, but from then, really, I think the composition is nicely done. You know, the reflection look good and everything. However, the noise is something what would have to be looked at, and I'm sure you already tried. And some of these shots, they just need to be reshoot. There is nothing else you can do about it with post-processing as much as you would like to try. Which brings us to this one, and the composition is great here. It's a kind of similar view, but what works here also that the boats are a little bit closer to each other, so the view is tighter and it's just a little bit more powerful, I think. I wouldn't crop anything away from it. I mean, you could a little bit here, but then you would start to crop into the boats here, and I really don't like to do that. So I would leave it. The reflection of the clouds and everything works very well. The kind of flow created by this little canal, I think, works very well too. And all in all, this is brilliant picture. Very, very good. Now, when it comes to post-processing, one thing, again, keep an eye on your sensor dust, which is, for example, visible here. And there's one above it as well. So something to keep an eye on. Second thing is when you really push the images, you also start to get this kind of glow around items. It's mostly visible here with a little bit of chromatic aberration as well. So again, something to kind of keep an eye on. You can see the green around here and purple from the other side. It's really not heavy and not that visible to human eye, but since you send the picture over, might as well point it for you so you can kind of review it and have a look at it. Now, to some point, you can avoid the chromatic aberration in a camera, but most of the time, no. It has to do with the direction of the light hitting the lens, and it's just easier to remove it in a post-processing later on. So that's about it. I wouldn't do anything further than that. I think the picture is really cool, love it, and beautiful. So this one, you know, sometimes when the light maybe isn't great and there is a lots of noise, there is always the option to turn it to black and white and maybe work with that, with a little bit of stuff like linear gradient and really close the picture from the top. So we just gonna kind of really focus on the boats and then just kind of push it around with something like a brush, you know, maybe do some dodge and burn, just kind of bring more attention to these parts, then we can do another one and really highlight the reflection. See, one more. Brush, push that. That can be done just by brushing around it to highlight whatever is happening there. And since it already look like kind of older, this is where the combination really works well with the black and white. When you have a noisy picture and mix it with black and white, sometimes it looks like it's done on purpose. And I think you could easily kind of claim it here. From the basic editing, you could bring down the exposure just a little bit, add a little bit of contrast, double check your blacks and whites. And that's about it. So, James, thank you very much for sending your photos over. Two very different results. One super well captured with a beautiful editing and beautiful result. And this one, which needs a little bit help, but can still be turned into something very interesting. James, take care, stay safe, and send us more pictures as soon as you can. Which brings us to Jay. Jay, we have two images from you. So let's have a look at them. Let's see if we have camera details. And we do. So this was both captured with Nikon Z6 and both of them with the 24-70 lens. Now, when we look at this one and we talk about the camera settings, we are on ISO 100, f8, 1/80th of a second. So as the setting goes, spot on, ISO 100, exactly where you want to be. F8 is very reasonable and makes everything nice and sharp unless you have really close things to camera. And 1/80th of a second, again, very much in threshold of being able to handheld it and move around and really capture nice images. Now, looking at it like this, it's to do probably with the quality of the image, but the background does look a little bit soft for me, but then so does the whole image. So that could be because of the transition into the JPEG, so I wouldn't be alarmed because of it, but really I would have expected a little bit more sharpness when I zoom in like this in overall. So I don't think it's necessarily to do anything with the f-stop. I think it's maybe with the camera just slightly shake, but that's about it. Other than that, the scene is very nice. The light is very pleasing. The colors are nice, so I would leave it there. Moving on this one, this has a beautiful kind of autumn, early autumn colors. I wonder when it was shot. October 2021. That does sound and look like it. So let's have a look again at the camera setting. ISO 100, f8, 1/200 of a second. So very well done. As a camera setting goes, I think that's perfectly fine and where you want to be. Also, you have a lots of nice texture in the sky with kind of starting from the dark, stormy clouds coming to the blue. I think that works very well. The color is great. The light is a little bit harsher than on the picture before, but nothing crazy. I think the shadows are still in the threshold of being quite nice and diffuse. Nothing is really shouting out of it or kind of overwhelming the photo. So all in all, technically, I think quite nicely done. When I zoom in again, I wonder where you're losing the sharpness, because you have a lot of sharpness in this area. And then when I move to the trees, it's just really kind of starting to look soft on this side. But then when I stick to the center, you get sharpness all the way through. It's interesting. I wonder why. I wonder if you use a tripod. Maybe in a comment you can just let me know if this was handheld or by tripod, so I know exactly what I am looking at. Which brings us to composition. Now, as a composition go, this is nice and storytelling. One thing I would double check is the tilt, because it really seems like it's tilting a little bit. I wonder if you would maybe go, yeah, maybe something like this would work. Obviously, this path of stones and the river creates quite nice flow. The only thing is, you kind of looking at it and you're trying to figure out what is it you're trying to show. Most likely it's the colors, because they are very pretty, but you know, the river is kind of cut off. So if that was your main subject, it's not really working, because it's just kind of cropped off away, even though it's a nice little element. Then there are the trees, but then if it's the trees, there is lots happening around it. Just a kind of few things to think about. Still, beautiful view, beautiful colors, very calming scene, and very pretty. Which brings us to here, and we talk about composition. Again, I think tilting just a touch, so maybe something like this would be better. And actually looking at it, because this is your main subject, it's like a little, some kind of copy of the town or something like that in a rock. I hope I'm right. This is a good example where, because there is not really anything which would help us with the scale. These could be little trees, or it could be huge trees. So maybe this is like a huge town which is of a size of a human, because I can't say when I zoom in, these looks like a huge grown trees, or it's just a bushes. It's really difficult to say like this, so I would quite like to know. Whatever, still, what I would do, I would probably go for the panoramic crop on 16 on 9 and really just zoom in to something like this. Bring the focus to it, because that's your main subject, that's the main story, and we don't need all the rest around it, I think. So something like this. Other than that, nicely done, nice frame around it, lovely things happening, very, very well done. Obviously, when it comes to post-processing, this is even calling for a little stronger vignette and for a little bit of brushing around, doing a little bit of dodge and burn, maybe just brightening some parts of it. And going in with another brush and darkening the other, just creating a little bit more contrast, not as strong, but just, you know, making it a little bit more interesting. So that's about it for this one. When it comes to this one, just double check your white balance would be my first thing. It's maybe fine, but yeah, just a touch less warmth, maybe something like this. I think the cropping is fine. I think the contrast is nice. The shadow and highlights work here with the sky and the trees. So I would probably leave this one J. I think this one is cool. This one is very nice too. I love the colors, love the light. Thank you so much for sharing these images with us. It was a pleasure. If you have more, make sure you send them over to us. Which brings us to Michael. Michael, we got the images from you. I got them by Pauline. Sadly, they came from Lightroom. It was shared through Lightroom, and they came out just like this. So there is no camera details, but I can still do the review on them, no problem. The easiest thing is to next time just export the images into JPEG and simply just send them as an attachment of the email. That's the most straightforward. If you can also use the Dropbox to upload your photos. Either way, let's have a look at the images. So both of them from the park. Starting from here, talking about technical skills, the sharpness is there, including the people, the birds, the trees. Where we gone? Here. So that's very nice. The light is very nice as well. It's a little bit brighter than I would like, but because of this canopy above, I think that really creates really nice close kind of environment where the light is a little bit more diffuse, so it's not that overwhelming. So I think that works quite nicely. That's about it. Now, when it comes to technical skills on this one, there is a lovely sky with lots of details in it, so I quite like that. Again, sharpness and lots of texture all the way through, with the bird being, again, all the way sharp. The light is a little bit better here, no harsh shadows, no harsh highlights, so that's nice as well. And lots of green foliage here, so nicely done when it comes to technical skills. Now, when it comes to composition on this one, in the front part is something what we call a high frequency foreground element, and it can get quite distracting for the viewers simply because there is just lots happening on the beginning. The foreground is something what works as an entrance to the image, and when there is lots happening, so frequency, obviously frequent elements, it just gets really busy before even the viewer kind of jump in. So it's just, if you could have avoided it, it would have been better. I know it's not always possible, but just as a suggestion. Where the rest of the image with these beautiful trees, the flow, the dark, the sky above creates very, very nice view. And this is why I'm saying that it would be great if you would have been able to avoid these bushes, at least these big ones. Maybe the smaller ones wouldn't be that distracting, but this one, and really just capture the rest of it, which would be super cool. The rest I really, really like. Now, when it comes to composition on this one, I love this image. I love the path, which creates really nice flow and a leading line. Obviously, there is things happening, so people interacting. This girl looks like she's fishing. The girl helps us to kind of open the scene, also helps us as a kind of pointing point for the scale, so we know how everything is big. Creates also the framing with these trees, I think works really, really well. And still the sky with lovely lots of details and the darks. A really storytelling capture, which is really powerful. So well done. Now, when it comes to post-processing, I think on both of them, I would just keep an eye on my white balance, making sure that the green doesn't go crazy. I would definitely leave it warm, but I would push the tint. Now, let me show you before and after. Even when you look at the girl, when I put it where it was, there is a lot of green on her hair, on her clothes, same on the guys and on a path. So then when I push the auto, bring back the yellow, you can see how everything becomes a little bit more natural. So that would be about it. You could do a little bit more edits to it, but I think the result looks very, very cool anyway. And then on this one, a little bit similarly, just double check on your white balance. I would leave the warmth, maybe a little less, but something like this. And definitely, again, push the tint, because before, after, specifically when you look, for example, at the bridge, when you look at the bridge before, you can see how green it is. When you push the pink, it gets its own natural chorus. On this one, maybe a little vignette in effects, just to kind of bring more attention towards the center. And that's about it. So, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your images with you. I was happy to review them. They are lovely. Well done. If you have more of them, make sure you send them to us for the next episode. Which brings us to Nico. Nico, we have this lovely image here. So let's have a look at it. Let's see if we have camera details. So no camera details here. That's a little bit of a shame. However, let's look at it just from here. So first of all, nice sharpness. I quite like that. All the way through. So it will be kind of higher f-stop for sure there. The light is a little bit harsh here. I mean, there is no hiding from it. You can see lots of dark shadows and bright elements right here. So just again, something to kind of look at. Beautiful sky, full of drama and details, which is always lovely. And that's about it for the technical part. Now, when it comes to composition, I love the path. I think that looks really cool, but I would just probably frame it and crop it a little bit differently. And also, it seems that the picture is kind of tilting towards that side a little. So first of all, let's have a look if we would go for something like 16:9. Then we tilt it back a little and we make sure that the tunnel is in the center of the image. Something like this. Still tilting a little bit. Better, a little bit better. So something that. And now, obviously, the hard shadows is one thing. Let's double check your white balance. Not that much yellow, but definitely a little bit of the purple. I think that's right about it. Our composition is really cool here with the leading line, with the tunnel. I think that always works. You can't go wrong with there. With the lovely sky above it, just really cool. So just continuing with the kind of post-processing, this is where you could really add a vignette to it to close the tunnel view even more. So something like this. Then definitely another linear gradient down here to kind of close the road a little bit further. So something like this. And we could do something similar from the top as well to really bring the attention towards the center. And to bring the attention out even more, we can use a radial gradient and just push the brightness there a little with little minus clarities, so it's natural. So that's about it, Nico. Lovely picture, lovely composition, lovely thinking. I wish you would have been there a little bit later with less strong light, but still very cool. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It was a pleasure to review it. You take care, stay safe, and if you have more, make sure you send them over. Which brings us to Sam. Sam, 2 images right here for you. But how come they are such a low quality? Well, this one is 228 kilobytes. So I can't even review that, Sam. I'm sorry. If you have it in a bigger quality, I would love to do that, but it looks pixelated and I'm not even zoomed in yet. So, I mean, stunning sky, beautiful elements here, but it's just, yeah, it would be too harsh for me to give you feedback on that one because it's just, yeah, lots of kind of artifacts coming out with this quality and lots of noise. So if you have that image in a better quality, make sure you send it over. I would love to review it for you, but let's just look at this one. Now, this one we are a little bit higher. So we are on 13 megabytes. So that's good. Although no camera settings. And again, lots of kind of strange artifacts, even for that quality of a picture. So something maybe not exactly right with your settings. Now, lovely trees here. But again, look, when I zoom in just a little bit, look what we get. We get just pixels, really, you know. So all you can see is, I know it's trees, and then that brings us to the sky, which has a completely different white balance, and it has a lots of pixelated noise. So I'm not 100% sure, Sam. Maybe the images got damaged on the way here. If that's the case, just try to resend them, please. Again, lovely colors here. However, you know, if I would look at it from this point of view, we're talking sharpness. Sharpness is not there. We're talking about noise. There is a huge amount of noise in the sky, even though the file is quite big. When we come to talk about light, it's really hard to judge it for me because you can't say it seems like it's overexposed from this, what I'm seeing. And you can really kind of see it specifically here in the light. So I think the best would be if you would try to re-upload the pictures in a better quality so I can tell you more about it. And its composition goes, this is very lovely, you know, the trees as a foreground with the colors, the mounting at the back, but it's the quality I need a little bigger. So that brings us to final 2 images from the landscape part. And we have a Stevie again, Stevie Brooks, also our photographer of the week. Back in 2021 with beautiful 2 captures. So let's have a look at them. Let's jump into it and let's have a look at the camera details. So both of them with Nikon D500 and 10-24 millimeters. Lots of wide lenses coming my way now. Lots of popularity with things like 10 to 12, 10 to 20 or 12 to 24. 10-24. So I'm assuming the wide lenses are now coming out a lot. Now, looking at this one, starting with the technical details. ISO 360, f11, 1/80th of a second. So ISO 360, I wonder why the high ISO. I'm sure we talked about it already. Stevie, you have a tripod, right? So why not to go for just kind of lower exposure? Maybe you were there just for a walk, so then it makes sense. But you can see the noise in these areas, even though you try to save it, it's still kind of visible. It lost some of the details, which I think is a little bit of a shame. But f11 is fine, yeah. Obviously, kind of keeping everything nice and sharp. And 1/80th of a second with unfortunate, because you could have gone slower. There is nothing what would start to move or blur except the boats at the back, but there could be simple blending done in Photoshop, and you could avoid the noise, I think, quite easily here. Now, technically, for the rest of it, there is a little bit of light leak happening here, and there is the sun here. But I'm not sure. I think that you get this kind of sunburst there, but I'm not sure if the sunburst was here or no. In a combination with the sun, it's just very tricky to say. It doesn't look very natural. I think that's what I'm looking for. As a composition goal, I love it. I would probably go a little tighter with the crop. I think there's lots of unnecessary space here, and going for maybe something like 16 or 9, and really kind of pushing in, making sure my horizon is straight. So something like this. And that's what I would have gone. Obviously keeping lots of the sky up, because that's a kind of main subject. And that's about it. So composition wise and technically, that's where we are here. Now, talking about this one, really lots happening. It's kind of overwhelming almost, the view, because there's a lots of yellow and orange, but then that is a little bit your style. So nothing I can say about that. When we look at the technical details, this one, again, Nikon D500 10-24, ISO 100, so spot on this one, 19 millimeters, so not as wide, f8, 1/50th of a second. So we find there, looking at it again, 1/50th of a second, so probably not with tripod, because if you had gone with tripod, it would become probably a little bit smoother and maybe a little bit more appealing. But other than that, I quite like it. Obviously, the sharpness is there, so that's good. On edges, you're getting a little bit of a soft edges, but that could be from the lens. Double check your settings in optics. Maybe that could be removed a little bit. Again, here you can see it a little bit, but that could be from your f-stop as well. So that's kind of depth of the field. Other than that, the details are nice. The sun coming from the side, creating quite nice scene as well. The reflection is half decent, although obviously you would wish the water would be a little bit smoother, but all in all, nicely done. As a composition goes, again, nicely done. You could again go a little lower if you would want to, avoiding some of this, but that's about it. When it comes to post-processing, keep an eye on your sides here and here. If you do any like a big sky adjustment, you really want to try to look as natural as possible. So just kind of some of these parts where you have this glow is something to keep an eye on. Other than that, double check always your white balance. Again, for me, it's a little bit too yellow. So maybe just -8. I would leave it pink. I think there's nothing wrong with it. Or maybe just -8, -5, just to keep it a little less saturated. And then on this one, when it comes to post-processing, I would push the contrast a little bit, just to kind of hide some of the noise here. And the rest of it is nice. Yeah, a little bit of sensor dust, I think, here and here, if I see it right. Easily removable. If you need the tutorial for it, it's in the description. Other than that, very cool. Stevie, it's always a pleasure to see your photos. I'm always amazed by the variety of the captures. Well done. Congratulations, and thank you so much for sending them over to us. If you folks want to join us for the next episode of our photography review show, all you need to do is to head to our website, cleverphotographer.com/review, and find the upcoming dates, and most importantly, all the information on how to join us already for the next episode if you would like to. Folks, stay safe, take care, and I can't wait to see you again